Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Today I'm going to share with you a comment someone left on my video about why I won't be responding anymore to Bionic Dance. It brings up something I've seen a fair amount, and I'd like to address. So being an atheist automatically means that my life is empty and meaningless. Forget the fact that I have a wonderful wife, with whom I just celebrated our 19th wedding anniversary. It's more like 25 years since we shacked up and lived in glorious fornicating sin for 6 years before getting married. We have a fantastic daughter and several subversive pets. The little guys are plotting against us, I know it. Don't try to tell me any different. Other than a pending pet coup, I couldn't have asked for a better life. I've never been happier. But, according to Mr. Theist, my very full and loving life is meaningless. Okay, big guy, if you think so. I do not believe that this commenter's life is meaningless, for the simple reason that I do not believe that his atheism is correct. The mere fact that he does not believe in God does not, in fact, erase God's existence, even just for him, and so none of the corollaries to God's non-existence apply to him, any more than they apply to a Christian. His life has plenty of meaning. He just has no right to think so. Now, I need to pause here because the very concept of intellectual consistency is not well understood in the modern world, which largely eschews thinking of all sorts in favor of feeling. I have no doubt that Mr. Lee feels his life is meaningful, and in fact, I have no quarrel with this. My only quarrel is that Mr. Lee should realize that this feeling is evidence that his atheism is wrong. But of course, like the typical atheist, he has never actually thought about what he says. His atheism seems to consist of nothing more than throwing off all restraint that doesn't appeal to him. I can't read minds, of course, but certainly his celebration of fornication is the only atheistical aspect to how he described his life. Anyway, does anyone doubt that if someone were to describe his wife as a pile of dirt, Mr. Lee would take offense? And yet, given the materialism which is reliably a consequence of his atheism, there is no important distinction between his wife and a pile of dirt, other than mass and the random configuration its subatomic particles happen to be in at present. Of course, and I've heard this many, many times, the standard answer is that it means more to him. But atheists rarely seem to consider the obvious rejoinder. So what? He happens to have some preferences for particular configurations of subatomic particles. What is that to me? And clearly he wants me to recognize this value, or he would never have argued with me in the first place. He clearly wants me to believe that this value is real. And just as a refresher, one of the most workable definitions of reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. But here's the thing about the value he places on his wife. It will go away if he stops believing in it. This sort of value is, simply, not real. If we are to take Mr. Lee's atheism seriously, the value he places on his wife and daughter is a game of make-believe going on in his head. And yet he takes the trouble to tell me about this imaginary value. I do not know in what sense Mr. Lee believes his atheism, but it certainly is not in the sense of regarding atheism as an accurate enough description of reality to live according to it. And the older I get, the less I have time for any other sense of the word belief. Mr. Lee seems to think that belief has a sort of magical, constructive quality, where if you believe, then it will be real. Perhaps we should call this the Peter Pan school of belief. Or maybe the Tinkerbell school of belief, since the whole "it works if you believe in it" thing was a property of pixie dust. But I'm only concerned with beliefs that describe reality. Beliefs that construct reality don't actually do anything. Like when he described living in fornicating sin as glorious. Yes, I get that the description of glorious is primarily meant to be defiant, a sort of shorthand for, tell me that it wasn't good, I dare you. But living with a woman without any sort of commitment to her, and more importantly to any children which you might conceive, is not the stuff of which glory is made. In fact, it's basically just drug-seeking behavior. The drug being dopamine, endogenously produced upon certain actions. The mere fact that you really enjoyed something, and lucked out in not running into any major bad consequences, is not glory. It's luck. You might as well describe a 6-month heroin bender as glorious. If he got his girlfriend pregnant with their daughter, then walked out to shack up with a hotter woman, that would have been bad. And if there was no chance of that happening, the marriage had already taken place, they just hadn't yet done the paperwork to pay their taxes jointly. But his rhetoric aside, either he was already married in all but name, or he was prepared to treat his girlfriend and potential children very badly, and is asking us to admire him for it. My guess is that he was actually already married in all but name, in which case he wasn't living in sin. he was simply living without documentation. I should note that I side with the Catholic Church in holding that it is the couple who create the marriage, and the officials are merely witnesses. Granted, the officials create the legal status, but the family is prior to government within the natural law. And in any event, Mr. Lee was married for a very long time by official reckoning, which I'd love to hear his explanation for in terms of animal instincts or subatomic particles or anything else which he officially believes in. But if my extensive experience arguing with atheists is a reliable guide, no such explanation will ever be forthcoming. Almost every atheist I've ever talked with has been content to say that such things are obvious, and I'm stupid for questioning them. But an unwillingness to think does not make a man rationally superior. It is, I think, better than overthrowing obvious truths because of a pet theory, but best of all would be to hold on to the obvious truth and consider what it actually means. Internet atheists love to say, "Where's the evidence?" Well, here is some of it. You're so convinced that your life isn't meaningless that no matter how much your theory of the universe categorically states that there is no meaning except what you pretend there is, you will never, ever admit it. You've got the evidence. That's not your problem. You need to learn what the evidence means. Because despite whatever post-Enlightenment nonsense you've heard, the deconstructionists are right about this. Evidence does not point to anything on its own. Evidence only points to conclusions when interpreted. Wisdom consists in learning to interpret evidence properly. The Enlightenment project of trying to substitute an intellectual method for wisdom was a failure, and was always doomed to be a failure. There is an, I think French, saying that it is impossible to make something foolproof, because fools are so ingenious. This is as true of logic as it is of anything else. It is an iron law of reality, more certain than any law of physics, that fools are only ever right by accident. Until next time, may you hit everything you aim at.